Earth formed about 4.6 billion years ago. But initially there was no solid surface, no oxygen in the atmosphere, and no oceans. Earth was a molten orb. We are now traveling forward in time on the highway of life. Each yellow line passing underneath us represents 10 million years. During this time, Earth formed some solid land and liquid water oceans, and the organic molecules that are the building blocks of life began their courtship. Chemical evolution ruled the planet. Molecules that could stand the environment endured, while those that could not simply dissolved. After 600 million years, biology has taken over, rising above simple molecules that could chemically duplicate themselves. We now have primitive cells living in the ocean that are the ancestors of all living things today. After another 500 million years, or 3.5 billion years ago, these primitive cells have learned photosynthesis. This ability to get energy from sunlight is arguably the single most important biochemical pathway, and nearly all life depends on it. And after another few eons have passed, this process will generate an oxygen-rich atmosphere. But for now, we have arrived at our first real fork in the road. It is 3 billion years ago, and the primitive cells have divided into two distinct camps. Archaea and bacteria look very similar. Both are single-celled microorganisms, but their DNA is very different. Some archaeans are capable of surviving in extreme habitats. They can survive in high temperatures, often above 100 degrees centigrade, as found in geysers, black smokers, and oil wells. Some thrive in saline, acidic, or extremely alkaline water. They are responsible for the brilliantly colored pools at Yellowstone that are scaldingly hot. And it is in this direction that we proceed. Now we approach our next crossroad. It is 1.4 billion years ago, and we must bid the Archaea adieu after traveling with them for 1.6 billion years. Life remains single-celled, but a new player is now on the scene. Eukaryotes are cells that have a nucleus. Today, this domain includes animals, plants, fungi, and numerous microorganisms. The origin of a cell nucleus was a milestone in the evolution of life. All complex cells, and almost all the multicellular organisms, have a cell nucleus. Not only that, eukaryotes invented sex. The next important development in our journey happened after eukaryotes developed flagellum. These eukaryotic flagellates then branched into those that had a single flagellum, or those that had two or more, the unicons and the bicons. Most animal sperm and fungi spores propel themselves with a single posterior flagellum, so we can count unicons as our ancestors. In contrast, phalangiate cells and other eukaryote groups propel themselves with one or more anterior flagella. They come from bicons. Animals come from unicons, and plants come from bicons. So we must part ways with plants and protists. So long, guys. It is interesting that fungi are more closely related to animals than plants. But now we must wave goodbye to fungi as well, as they had downtime on their own to become mushrooms and yeast and molds. Have a good life, cousins. Animals, here we come. We have just traveled 4 billion years. And now the pace of evolution increases, so our pace down the highway of life must slow down in order to describe it. The lines on the highway, which used to represent 10 million years apiece, now represent only 1 million years apiece. Sponges were the first animals that had different kinds of cells doing different tasks. Some of their cells pumped water, and some filtered out tiny bits of food, but they had no real tissues. Cnidarians, anemones and their relatives, on the other hand, had muscle cells and nerve cells. This enabled them to bend, stretch, and flex. Jellyfish were probably the first animals to move using muscles. An ancient marine worm was the first animal to move purposefully. It had nerve cells that ran the length of its body, and a concentration of these cells at one end formed the first primitive brain. In fact, this was the first animal with a head, and the light-sensitive cells in that head allowed it to recognize both the direction and the intensity of light. Since it could both see and move, this worm interacted with the world in a very new way. The Cambrian began about 540 million years ago and lasted about 50 million years. During this time, the varieties of life exploded. Every group of animals living today can find their roots in the Cambrian. It is here that we part ways with the sponges. And the cnidarians and jellyfish. And platyhelminthes, the flatworms. Starfish and the sea urchins and other echinoderms have just joined us, and we must already bid them goodbye. So long to the roundworms and other annelids. Hello and goodbye to the mollusks and ancestors of squid and octopus. Arthropods, we hardly knew ye. Have fun giving rise to spiders, crabs, scorpions, and insects. The road ahead is our own. At this stage, our direct ancestors are the earliest chordates. 530 million years ago, the earliest chordates appeared. They looked more like worms than fish, but they would give rise to all creatures with a backbone. The first true vertebrates were jawless fish with cartilage for skeletons. They lacked the paired fins of fish to come. 480 million years ago, fish finally developed jaws and teeth. So long to lampreys. And 450 million years ago, the first bones. So we part ways with sharks and rays. The lungfish will carry us forward toward the next big step. Tetrapods. $365 million years ago, fish living in shallow waters traded fins for legs, had simple lungs as well as gills, and became the first tetrapods. And by this time, plants and centipedes, and spiders and insects had been on land for 30 million years. The earth was green and the skies were blue with an oxygen-rich atmosphere. 340 million years ago, the first true amphibians began to harvest the resource by coming onto land to feed. But they had to keep their skins moist and had to return to the water to breed. This is the earliest known reptile. It was about 8 inches long and looked a lot like modern lizards. Because reptiles have tough, waterproof skins, their territory wasn't restricted to damp domains of the amphibians. And by pioneering waterproof eggs, they could even breed without returning to the water. Amniotic eggs have been around for over 300 million years. Lies with Eutheria, which have a placenta. The earliest Eutheria resemble a small mouse. 90 million years ago, we part lines with elephants and manatees. 85 million years ago, so long to horses, dogs, and cats. 75 million years ago, we part ways with mice and rodents. Primates are directly ahead. It is 65 million years ago, and the dinosaurs just died. And a small animal that looked like a cross between a squirrel and a monkey becomes the ancestor of all primates. After a few million years, Old World monkeys are clearly recognizable, and they have had a good run ever since. 25 million years ago, the first of the lesser apes appeared. Once again, we have to slow down. So the lines passing underneath us now represent 100,000 years apiece. 15 million years ago, orangutans appeared and the gibbons split off. 13 million years ago, our ancestors split from the orangutans. 10 million years ago, we split from the gorillas. 7 million years ago, we split from the chimps and bonobos. The earliest known human ancestor, postdating the separation of the human and the chimpanzee lines, is in our sights. Humans are dead ahead. Our ancestral path at this point is a bit indefinite, primarily because there are many species of hominids who could be in our ancestral line, or maybe not. But although we lack specifics, there is enough evidence to give a good outline of our history. This is Tumai. It is the oldest known hominin, and dates between 6 and 7 million years ago. Auroran dates about 6 million years ago and was probably bipedal. Ardipithecus lived from 5.8 to 4.4 million years ago. This is Kenyaanthropus from 3.5 million years ago. This is Lucy, an Australopithecus afarensis from 3.2 million years ago. Meet Australopithecus africanus. He is from 2.5 million years ago. Homo habilis, from 1.9 million years ago, was found with tools. Homo ergaster dates to 1.6 million years ago. Homo erectus lived from 1.8 million years ago until 300,000 years ago. This specimen is from 500,000 years ago. Homo sapiens includes ourselves as well as several, perhaps many other subspecies. This is our close cousin, Neanderthal, who lived from 230,000 years ago to just 30,000 years ago. They buried their dead as long ago as 100,000 years. This woman is the mother of all mankind, the common ancestor from whom we all descend. She lived 150,000 years ago in East Africa, and everyone on Earth is related to her.